Chelsea's excited.
Yes.
And we are live and on the air. And this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. And this is the second greatest science podcast in the universe. We're setting records in viewership. And we're second because the first greatest podcast is This Week in Science. It has an even bigger audience. And joining me tonight, yes, there we go, Chelsea. Chelsea's excited. I can see that. And joining me tonight, we have our Canadian engineer, Dale. How you doing, Dale?
We're number two. We're number two. We're number two.
And of course, we have Pamela and Chelsey, our two Australian minions. Usually Justin Jackson shows up, but he wasn't in TWIS last night, and I think he may be having some back problems, so we probably won't see him. Hope you're getting better, Justin. But also like to thank Kirsten. Kirsten's been giving us shout-outs in This Week in Science, promoting the show. That's always great to hear. We have some interesting stories. I love citizen scientists. Love citizen scientists. And we got some citizen scientists that are now biohacking. They're actually using CRISPR technology. And these are people. These are not PhDs. These are citizen scientists. One guy's an IT guy. And an artist. Another one. And they're actually using this technology. It's only been around for like 3 years. And they're experimenting with it. So that's great. Another interesting story. We're talking about how something called Cholinergic neurons, and they send broadcast. Send broadcasts, enabling us to learn from the unexpected. Learning from the unexpected. So I'm going off into a rant about how important it is for us to continually seek the unexpected and take risks. And we got controlling embryonic stem cells with light. Ooh, lasers. And we of course got to throw in, TWIS is like the real science. Here on TWIS Minions, every once in a while we kind of throw in tabloid science. Dale did the Russian head transplant thing. That was fun. And now we got kind of a science tabloid talking about the Bionic Penis. That's going to be interesting. And our main story is about Katrina. 10 years later, August 29th, was when New Orleans suffered the worst of Katrina. So we'll get into that. And let me screen share. You're excited, Dale. I can see that. You're anticipating. I can see that.
I am.
And your daughter, Autumn. One of your daughters. Don't know which one. Is joining us.
Did you download the Flintstones? Oh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, Dale's in trouble. You got to go download the Flintstones.
That's funny.
Okay. We're going to talk about citizen scientist biohackers. Let's do the old screen share. There. And there we go. There we got biohacker Juan Sosa. And this is with a complete lack of formal scientific training has not come Johan Sosa from dabbling with one of the most powerful molecular biological tools, the CRISPR technology. And he's already used it. It's a 3-year-old technology that makes targeted modifications to DNA in test tubes experiments. Now he hopes to try this method on yeast and later in a plant model. And I'm not going to attempt to name the name of that plant. A growing community of amateur biologists often work in community laboratories which typically charge a recurring fee for access to equipment and supplies, driven by the inventive spirit that inspires them to fiddle with yeast to alter the flavor of beer, build art installations out of bacteria, or pursue serious basic research questions, these amateurs cannot wait to try the technology. It's like the most amazing tool ever, and that's Andreas Strumeyer. He's a biohacker and entrepreneur, lives in Dublin. You can do it in your own home. Johan Sosa is an IT consultant in San Jose, California. He took up biohacking as a hobby about 3 years ago. First, he was going to try to grow organs. Hey, start by thinking big. He had no idea how unrealistic that was, but he's set his sights now on trying to bioengineer, biohack yeast and a plant. The challenge of manipulating living cells sank in as they began to read. Now, this is the thing, information that's available for the amateur. Molecular, biological textbooks. He attended seminars and taught himself laboratory technologies. He's joined the Bio-Curious community, Sunnyvale, California. You got another guy, an artist, Gregor Tremal. He's a research fellow in biological data visualization at the University of Tokyo. He has some plans for CRISPR. Him and his collaborators plan to de-engineer genetically modified blue carnations sold in Japan by snipping out the inserted gene that turns the flower blue, thus reinverting it to its natural white state. So far, the hardest part of the project has not been using CRISPR, but growing the carnations in cell cultures. In addition to its creative possibilities, CRISPR also poses potential for mischief. I've thrown this in, and I don't really buy this next paragraph. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation Bioterrorism Protection Team. They painstakingly forged relationships with biohacker communities the last few years, regularly reminding its visitors to keep out of suspicious activities. Well, I got to tell you, we are reaching the point where people are doing genetic engineering in the garage, so that, it's out in the wild. It's now in the wild. As hard as some of our agencies may try to control it, not going to work. It's out in the wild. Given the constraints of a DYA lab, many hobbyists resort to CRISPR only when they need an extremely precise change to the genome. And here we're talking about a guy named Keanu Gendal. He's a 16-year-old biohacker and science fair champion from Huntington Beach, California. He's been working with polymerase chain reaction machines and centrifuges at home for about 3 years. 16-year-old kid. I mean, this is amazing. We'll stop there. Citizen scientists, to the point where they can now, try genetic engineering experiments.
There's lots of things that teenagers and kids invent. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pack as I go because I've got to move this week, so I'm doing multitasking. But that's one of the reasons I have no interest in putting my daughter through regular school. And Dale, you homeschool your kids as well, because you're categorized by age, and age has nothing to do with ability. So it's ridiculous that the school system is based on age. So this is why I love these stories with these kids coming out with stuff that people 5 times their age wouldn't achieve.
I find most people aren't as dedicated with their kids, and they're not able to do it because it takes such a. It's a rare thing, I think. I don't think there's that many people out there that have the time and patience to do that, and But if you can, there's massive benefits when it's done. But yeah, it's so hard. You have to have lots of patience, and Pamela is the queen of patience.
No, it's just, well, I'm patient because I'm dedicated. I mean, this is my whole reason for existing. I'm a mother now, and my attitude is probably because I had her when I was in my mid-30s, so I already did a lot of stuff and achieved a lot of stuff, and so now the next, at least 20 years is dedicated to this little person and making sure she has the best start in life. But the thing is that if the regular education system was much better, then I would be happy to put her in it, because I had fantastic time at school, and I'm still friends with people from 30 years ago that I met through school. They're the best people in my life. So I'm going to have to make sure that she meets people like that, at extracurricular activities. Like I have to make sure she goes to karate and dancing and things like that to make sure she meets other people. So I'm happy to homeschool her, but it's sad that I feel like I have to. No,
yeah, I agree. Yeah, like they're not going to find CRISPR-Cas9 in the school system, but at home.
Exactly. Isn't that the great thing about the internet? It's out there, and these communities now. Now you have communities of hackers, biohackers, whatever it happens to be, and these they're going to be bringing their children in. So this citizen scientist, the amateur. They have so many more opportunities, going to have many more in the future, and don't you think children, young people, have such a greater opportunity to have access and to have mentors?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's pretty good. I think the toughest thing, though, like I find it hard to, as the kids get older, I find other people have an easier time with my kids than I do. Someone from the outside can reason with them from a logical perspective better than I can. And I was talking to other people that I know about the same thing, and they said, yeah, it's always easier to talk to someone else's child and reason with them, right? So if you're doing something like teaching them science or whatever, and that's part of the homeschooling thing too, where if you find a friend that has skills and things in other areas, you can kind of switch and swap if that's available.
Yeah, that's what we plan on doing. And, I was just thinking, other people have said to me, oh, but can't she go to school and do all the extra stuff that you think she needs to learn after school? Yeah, that's another way of doing it, but I just found school such a waste of my time. I know that sounds really arrogant, but I really did. And I just, I sat there for the 6 hours a day or whatever it was thinking I could just be doing so much more with this time. And then, I'd something, and I'd do much more after school than I would do during school. And yeah, I don't want to waste your time like that. But that's a choice you can make when you get older too. For now, we're just putting things in bags and pulling them back out while Mummy's trying to pack.
Well, just speaking of my own personal story, I mean, school was totally boring. And I aced every book, and the classes were completely boring. And they'd be going over a book, and they'd be on page 2, and I'd be on page 43, and it was just completely boring experience. And I really kind of drifted into a career. There was nobody around me, school, my family, who were interested in the things I was, something like science, something like art. So I drifted into the job of being an accountant. Today, just like Chelsea, think of the opportunities I'd have as a young person to interact with other people, and it's over the internet. I'd learn about people from other countries. I'd be interacting with people who are just interested in science, just what I'm interested in now, and you know, I would have taken a completely different path. Don't know if it would have been a better one, but it would have been a completely different path. And I think we're going to see younger people taking the path they want to take, having the opportunity to interact with people they really want, they're really interested, who are interested in the same things they are.
I wonder the how do I say this? Some of the homeschooling that I've seen, it's a higher percentage than what I've seen in the normal. In a normal school, you have bullies, you have all sorts of difficult things that you have to get over, and kids can be quite cruel. In homeschooling, is it too antiseptic? Is it too perfect, where everything is happy, and then going out into the world later with that sort of worldview? Is that one of the minor downsides that has to be compensated for? Because especially when you're a mom, when you're a mother, or a father of a homeschooled kid, is it too antiseptic, where we're not going to arm them with the tools that when you get out in society, the cruelty, the difficult parts?
That's something I've thought about as well. Don't you think adults bully?
Yeah.
And there's bullying on the internet, and there'll be bullying when she goes and plays sports on teams. I think she'll get enough of it.
Yeah.
You know, and the schools, the way they dealt with bullying when I was a kid was basically sort it out yourself, and then when you ended up in a fist fight with someone, you both got suspended. They didn't care who started it. That was ridiculous. But now, anyway, I think the school. Well, I don't know about what Canadian schools or US schools are like, but in Australia, I think it's. I think that's antiseptic. The way that the bullying thing is really. I think they mollycoddle them too much.
Oh.
Let them figure it out. Let them have a fist fight. But they're afraid of. Lawsuits with someone gets a broken nose and then their modelling career is over or some rubbish.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. That's really interesting. Everybody's so worried about liability that we can't just let people be people and let them grow in a way that they need to grow. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but like Pamela said, it depends on how you homeschool your kids and how much you immerse them in the home environment. I mean, if you have your kid going out in the playground, which I assume Pamela will be doing, and taking part in sports and things when she's younger, she's going to encounter that.
I mean, Chelsea's already had it. We had, just for an example, the first time she walked unaided was she walked across the room and pushed a boy over who's a year older than her. She just walked up and went, and I thought, do I celebrate that she just walked by herself, or do I go, naughty Chelsea for doing, you know what I mean? He was fine. He just sort of sat there surprised. But then she was playing with that same boy and another boy who was the same age as that boy, and the second boy grabbed her walker off her and ran off with it. He didn't need it. He just grabbed it off her, and she's sort of there going, I can't walk this. Now she runs, of course, but at that stage she just couldn't walk without the walker, so she sort of went, oh God, it's stuck here now. And then she was playing with blocks, and he came up and went, mine, 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 and grabbed the blocks out of her hands, and she just sat there and, oh, okay. And so she grabbed different blocks. And then he ran Matchbox cars over her face until, like, his mother and my mother, you know, sort of, my mother, his mother and I'm the mother, ran up and stopped from doing that. But she said, "Oh no, that means he likes her." So, you know, that's just a part of life. I don't think an institutionalized school makes a difference one way or another. I think you're going to learn those lessons no matter what.
Yeah. Well, as long as you have a mom or a dad or a parent that won't overprotect them.
Yeah. No, I try not to.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Well, it sounds like you have a really good balance.
But what I'm saying is that in the schools, I think the schools are overprotective now. I don't have any first-hand experience. I'm just going off. I've got a lot of friends who are school teachers, so I'm just going off what they tell me, and of course friends with kids at school. And it sounds a lot. It doesn't sound as rough as when I went.
I know here, the school system here, it's tough for teachers because they're so afraid of anything that happens with the kids, that, you know, all sorts of liability issues and saying the wrong things and everything, and we've kind of given control over to the students in many ways. And kids being kids, they're going to abuse that and use it for their own selfish purposes, right? Because that's genetically what we do. That's a survival skill, is to, you know, monopolize whatever situation you can, because it's survival. And but I don't think we've, in Canada anyways, I don't think we've done ourselves any good by allowing all the power to go to the students. And I think in many cases teachers just kind of barely hold on, because if they try to do any sort of reprimand or anything, I think they're immediately under fire by parents.
One of my friends is a teacher, and this is a couple of years ago now, but I remember her telling me about it. And she teaches second graders, and she was just mucking around with one of the kids in that, and I can't remember what the kid had done, but she's a smart child, right? So my friend, the teacher, said, "You idiot, just mucking around with her." And it became a big thing. She went and told her parents that a teacher called her an idiot, and they had to go and, you know, talk to the principal. And what the hell? She was just talking to the kid. The kid's smart. The kid knows she's smart. Teacher knows she's smart. It was just an offhand comment. You know, yeah, you can't do anything like that now, though.
Yeah, that's down to, one, the parents, two, the principal. Because I mean, the principal, he can certainly back and support his teachers, and hard for me to judge. I mean, I haven't been in school since, you know, 1960, so I'm strictly talking secondhand of it. I know a couple of teachers, but it's challenging. But a teacher who gains respect can deal for the most part. But it's challenging, obviously, to maintain that kind of respectful control over kids. I don't know. I think our school system could certainly be better. I'm more concerned with the style of teaching, of getting away from rote teaching, which is happening. I'm more concerned about that than anything like disciplines and liability. Heck, we got schools in the United States where there are weapons detectors. You got to worry about kids bringing weapons to school, for Pete's sake. That happens.
Thankfully, we're not at that stage here.
I'm going to jump into the next story, which actually is a little bit related. I got a screen share. We got a cute little picture here, so you don't have to look at the top of my head, the old bald guy. And now this is neuroscientists at Cold Spring Harbor. And they discovered a set of dedicated neurons in the basal forebrain that broadcast a signal throughout the cerebral cortex, rapidly informing multiple distribution subregions of any surprising rewards or punishments. And they call these reinforcers. These neurons are called, and I'm probably mispronouncing this, but it's cholinergic neurons. C-H-O-L-I-N-E-R-G-I-C. Cholinergic. That's what I'm going to call it. And the study was by Adam Kepix. He was associate professor at Cold Spring Harbor. And these neurons, and I'm going to have to read this because it gets a little complicated here for me. These cholinergic neurons from one of the brain's several neuromodulator systems. They send signals in the form of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. How do you pronounce that? Do you know about that? You ever heard this word? Dale, A-C-E-T-Y-L-C-H-O-L-N-I-E.
Acetylcholine?
Acetylcholine. There you go. To broad swaths of the brain. Although they have been thought to play an important role in arousal, attention, and learning, their precise role in behavior has remained a mystery. In a paper published today in Cell, Kepix and his colleagues report on how central cholinergic neurons function using optical genetic neuron identification, technique in which mouse neurons are genetically engineered to respond to light. Very, very difficult to find neurons. Once they identified these neurons, the team recorded their activity while mice performed a second detection task requiring sustained attention. Depending on whether their response was correct or incorrect, the mice were either rewarded with a drop of water or punished with a puff of air to the face. They discovered that these neurons responded to reward and punishment with unusual speed, usually within a few 10,000ths of a second. To explain the responses, the researchers constructed a computational model which revealed that the modulation of the signal strength was proportional to how unexpected or surprising the mice found the reward or punishment. According to the model, the mice were certain their response was correct. The reward generated a weak signal. If they were unsure, the reward came as more of a surprise and generated a stronger signal. This suggests to us that it's not really about punishment per se. It's simply that punishment is usually more surprising. And they suggest these neuron broadcasts to the cortex would be useful in boosting plasticity, allowing flexibility in neuron connections that make learning possible. And one of the things I want to lead that particular story to, one of the things it talks about, is really our brain's ability to respond to surprises. And I think our brain, it's in our DNA to take risks, to be adventurous, take an adventure, take risks. And our brain needs to be surprised, is what I'm thinking. And just like we were talking a little bit about having our children, having the young kids getting into an environment they're not used to, dealing with different factors in the environment. You know, life's got to be an adventure. And we need these kind of surprises. And as Dale, as you alluded to, we have some parents maybe who they want to make a safe environment for their kids. Safety becomes the important thing. Well, safety is nice, but you've also got to let kids explore. You've got to let kids take risks. We have a term now called helicopter parenting, where the kids are just watching their kids and everything that they do. Heck, we got some parents maybe putting a GPS on their kids so they can follow what their kids are doing. And life's got to be an adventure. And we've got to make sure, particularly young people, are allowed to take risks.
So let me ask you this. An extreme helicopter parent that doesn't let their kids out of the house, and because of safety, is that an illness?
Could be. Could be.
Yeah, it's interesting.
There could have been an environmental factor when the parent was growing up that caused them to be concerned, overly concerned, but concerned about their children. It could be biological. The parent would grow up in a kind of an environment where they were very controlled, quite natural, that they would therefore want to create an environment for their child that is also controlled. You talked about homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to pick too much on people doing it for religious reasons. That's the one I'm most common with, and that's the one I'm most common with where they're same, not tendency. Certainly not all the time. Apologies to Christians, because scientists probably are guilty of, scientific parents probably guilty of the same thing. But it's they're immersing their child. They want their children to go in a particular direction, and so they immerse their children in an environment that will lead their child to go off in a particular environment. That's bad. That's a very bad thing. Natural, but a very bad thing.
I agree. So what happens to, what's the outcome from health-wise? An extreme helicopter parent, if your kids don't go outside, that's, your body doesn't synthesize vitamin D, right? We don't know the complete effects of that. There's all sorts of interesting things on, people think that they're doing the right thing for their kids because they love them so much and they want to put them in bubble wrap and keep them safe from everything. But in doing that, everything in life is a double-edged sword. There is no free lunch. Anything you do has a positive and a negative effect. That's what I think. So by protecting them in one way, you may be hurting them in another. It may not be just predictable at that moment.
Yeah, and I'm also going to take a bit of a leap. I don't think it's too much of a leap. Safety. Emphasis on safety. And I see it in the United States, for instance, and happened after Pearl Harbor, happened after 9/11, where too many people are focused on safety. They want the government to make them safe. They're willing to sacrifice some personal freedoms. You know, let the government, Homeland Security Department, do whatever you got to do, because I want to be safe from these terrorists. I feel that's an exaggerated fear. There's terrorists, homegrown and otherwise, but you can't let that fear become so persuasive that you give up your personal freedom to a government. And then, the 1984 business, nice little safe environment, government takes care of me. That's going to lead in an awfully bad direction. So I think
let's talk about terrorists for a second. I believe that when people are born, the vast majority of people are born really good. Their environment can skew that and make them into difficult people, but what we define as a terrorist, how does somebody get there? What do they go through to get to the point where they literally want to blow up somebody because they're from a certain country. How does that happen? What do you have to go through to get to the point where you think violence is the answer because of somebody's country of origin?
Not trusting your neighbors. One could be you're in a society. Your society is a particular ethnic group, a particular religious group. We have nationalism. You belong to a particular country, and anybody outside you're suspicious of. And if in growing up, or you have an experience from an outsider, you maybe exaggerate that threat that outsiders represent. So that's why I'm looking for things like the internet. People from different countries, different societies, social groups, ethnic groups, communicating and interacting with one another, so we develop more trust and therefore less fear of these people who don't look and don't necessarily act or believe like you do.
Yeah, it's interesting how I think it always depends on the situation, on how people can become on the outer fringes of, you know, wanting to kill another human being. So in the case of, let's say, Canada's has a large military force, and we invade the U.S. I guess, what does it do to your psyche if your family is directly affected? So the Canadians, the big bad Canadians, come in and they wipe out half your family from the air, dropping bombs. What does that do to you? Do you hate all Canadians for it? Do you hate who dropped the bomb? I don't know how I'd feel in that situation, right? If it happened to me, I think I would be really upset. I think I would be, would it drive me to want to inflict terror on another person? Maybe. I don't know. I wonder what I would do if it affected my family directly, or close friends even. How would you react in that situation? If you can't attack them because you have no military force, you do whatever you can to hurt them if you've been hurt yourself. I think that's a human emotion. Or am I way off base here? It almost sounds like I'm protecting terrorism, and I don't. Terrorism is a bad thing. I'm just trying to understand it.
Wiz Mike in our chat area says we need a north wall to keep you Canadians out. Worst thing, war. War's nothing new. Look at the United States. Okay, after Pearl Harbor, okay, we're going to go war with Japan. Okay. And so what do you do in the United States? You have these little posters, and you make up characters, and you call them names and things, so they're not, human beings. So let's, now you can go out and kill them because they're not human beings. We got to defend the country. But when the war was over, within 10 years, we had kind of good relations. We've developed very good relations with Japan. Now they were so devastated that, and then we had General MacArthur went in, and he became like the supreme commander and controller. But the thing is that the country was devastated. But the thing is, within 10 years, and I'm just saying 10 years, we had developed good relations. We invaded Vietnam. We dropped Agent Orange on Vietnam. They fought us tooth and nail. We did horrible things to them. They did horrible things to us. When that was over, within 10 years, we developed, within 10 years, American soldiers were going back to Vietnam, you know, visiting places. So
Yeah.
it comes down to, really, I think, the reason for war and what happens after that war that dictates it. Now, if you're in an environment, I'm going to jump into the Middle East. Okay, you really have wars between Sunni and Shiite. Well, that thing goes back to when Muhammad died. So you're talking about a conflict that's been going on for 600 years.
Yep.
It's tradition. Those people are not predisposed to trust each other. Kind of a never-ending, I have no clue how that kind of a conflict is going to end, because it's so traditional. You have societies that countries don't really interact with each other a lot, and everything mitigates against not finding peace after the conflict is over. The opposite, the United States, in World War II, Germany, you had countries like France, Russia, taking the traditional view, let's make sure the Germans are down. Let's make sure they never get an army to good again. United States, we had, what the heck was it? Geez, I'm blanking on the guy's name, our Secretary of State, soldier. Brilliant guy. He gave aid to Germany. He turned Germany, effectively, into an ally. It can be done, but it comes down to how married are you. It comes down to almost the reasons behind the conflict. It comes down to the nature of the conflict. It comes down to terrorism. I think that's really what it comes down to, how much people are interacting. Is it a war fought over material? Is it a war fought over territory? We see less and less of those, which is why we see less and less world wars. But it comes down to the nature of the relationship between the two parties that determines what happens after the war is over.
So depending on that relationship, that heavily influences behavior from individuals. So do you think in most cases, like when, say in Iraq, when things were at their most heated, I'm guessing that's around 2007 or so, when things were terrible, the people putting these bombs, roadside bombs, where they're designed to kill soldiers when nobody else is around. Was that a military action, or was it a divine action dictated by their God?
I would say basically no. Now, you have X number of fanatics, young kids probably, so indoctrinated that to the point in some cases they maybe actually believe they sacrifice their lives, they'll go to heaven with be with 30 virgins. Maybe in Africa, I don't want to pick on countries where you've been fighting these people for hundreds of years, and you don't see them as being like you. And therefore, you'll do anything. I mean, in Vietnam, the strategy used by the North Vietnamese was horrific, to the point where you had cases where the American Army would go in and vaccinate children in a village. The North Vietnam would come at night, and they did this at least in one case, and hack off the arm that was vaccinated. The Americans come back, there's just piles of arms. But that was what they had. They were outnumbered, outgunned. They developed this strategy to almost show the United States you can't win. You cannot win. It took the United States a long time for that to sink in. We were the foreign invaders in their country, but they developed a strategy, whatever is necessary, to defeat the enemy. But when the war was over, they went back, rebuilt their country, had no problems with Americans visiting that country. So
and that's so hard to understand. You know, speaking with my friend from Iraq, I can't remember his name. He Facebook friended me, and he said basically that what's happening now is people are in gangs, and you know, you have to have several jobs in order to make ends meet. Some of the places are very dangerous to be in, and it comes down to very, sometimes from the outside, everything appears to be ideological, where, you know, these massive people are following these really large groups. But I bet you in the communities, it's very much very small militias and very small gangs, yeah, that become the issues and the problems. And I'm just always really interested in how human beings get to certain places, how the brain functions and works, so that, and maybe it's not even war, but maybe it's bipolar disorder, maybe it's Alzheimer's, all those things. How the brain works is very interesting, and yeah, we're fragile creatures, and we've developed this thing called science that can get us to a place that, when the brain isn't working right, we have this logical process we can follow to help guide us.
Yeah, this was on, there's a podcast, Ira Glass, I can't think of the name of it, and it was a soldier, American soldier in Iraq. And as far as he was concerned, the Iraqis, you kill them. You see them, you kill them. Came back to the United States, and he saw Muslim-looking people walking around, and he couldn't understand. Why don't you just kill them? I don't understand this. He went to college. Well, he went into therapy, went to college. He attended a class, and part of his therapy, he attended a class made up of Muslim students. He became friends with these students. He became part of the support group. He helped them sponsor a race or something for outreach. And, you know, he completely changed his view. So, yes, it's how hardwired is it really? And our brain is malleable. We're capable of evolving. And so even in the most extreme examples where you just say you're ready to kill somebody because they just look different than you are, with the right there, and when they begin interacting, you begin interacting with this person who you've been told and thought of as, you know, as being some ridiculous being, you know, like be it a, you know, a gypsy or whatever it happens to be, whatever your prejudice is, and you interact, you discover they're just another human being. When that happens, and as we let that happen, the world's going to change.
No, I can't even remember why the Iraq War happened. I can't remember why it actually happened in the first place.
Yes, Pamela?
Which one?
Oh, the latest, the 2000.
One spurred two.
The latest, having because Bush wanted to invade, and he pretended that they had weapons of mass destruction and that they had something to do with Al Qaeda. So instead of actually going to where Al Qaeda was, which was Pakistan and Afghanistan, they went to Iraq because Iraq had oil. That's why it happened.
It started with the senior Bush when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait.
So George said, "Oh."
That's when Bush said, "Okay, now Kuwait, big oil country. We're not going to let you mess around with Kuwait." So that's when the senior Bush, the first Bush, went in and we invaded and we drove the Saddam Hussein's Iraqi army out of Kuwait. But we didn't go any further than that. Bush number 2 comes along. I don't know. Maybe he figures he's going to finish his father's job. I don't really know. Maybe it was just like Pamela said. I don't know. He thought.
He said he threatened his daddy. I can't remember the exact line, but he said something about he's going to have to kill Saddam Hussein because he threatened his daddy. It wasn't it was personal. It was familial, and it was financial. So.
Yes, there was a definite financial component to that second war.
And as we found out, Iraq had nothing to do with Al Qaeda, and they did not have weapons of mass destruction.
The level of ignorance by our leaders at that time is mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling.
Do you know that I actually have a degree in counterterrorism and security from Murdoch University? So, no? So I started that degree in 2006, and I finished it in 2009. And at the start of the degree in 2006, I anticipated that I would be working for ASIO, which is our version of the CIA. And by the end of it, I realized I could not work for that terrorist organization. So it just became another one of my pretty pieces of paper. And it's been actually quite useful because part of my law degree deals with international and terrorism. So there's a big chunk of my degree that I don't have to study for because I already know that stuff. But yeah, I intended on, I started the degree very patriotic and ended up realizing that the governments are the worst terrorist groups on the planet. Way worse than any of the other threats that they would try and make you think you have.
Government-wise, what shocks you most? What was the thing that most shocked you about a government and what they did?
I don't know where to start. Shocked. Yeah. I don't know if any of it was shocking. I think it was disappointing. In a way, my law degree has been the same. I think I've said before, I've been really surprised to find out what some of our laws are. I didn't even realize, because you think things are based on common sense, but they're not. So it's actually quite disappointing. Our legal system is based on stuff that happened 500 years ago. And counterterrorism is based on old world prejudices, and it comes down to what Ed said. The media will have you think that we're all different. What we all need to realize is we're all the same. I posted a meme on my Facebook page the other day that it was a bear sitting at a picnic table with a knife and fork, and it said, what did it say? Gay, straight, black, white, Asian, you all taste like chicken. And that's exactly it. We all taste like chicken. It's all the same.
Yeah, I think people are people. Everybody's just trying to get by. And for me, I think the reason I like science so much is I have a firm belief, and everybody knows this because I say it all the time. I think science will make things ubiquitous, and I hope it does. Because with ubiquity, when there's lots of stuff for everyone, there's less greed. You don't need to be greedy anymore. And I hope that's the way it works out, and that's why I like science so much.
Yeah,
and that's what sorry, I was just going to say it's the unfair distribution of resources. You know, countries that don't have what we have want it, and they'll take it by force if we don't share it willingly, and vice versa. I mean, it's something that I don't know if the movie made it out to you, but there's a series of books called Tomorrow When the World Began. Tomorrow When the War Began. Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay, and it's about when Australia gets invaded by Indonesia. So we have about 22 million people. This was written when we had about 20 million people, and their army alone is 40 million. Not their population. So, and they're just sitting, you know, a couple of hours north of our country. So, four and a half hours, I think it is, the flight. Anyway, and and we have all these resources. They're not someone we want to piss off. And that's something that I was worrying about long before I read the books or saw the movie about it. It's just down to greed. And what is it? There's enough for everyone's need, not everyone's greed. So people in wealthy nations need to live a bit less luxuriously so that people in unwealthy nations can live much better.
I like the idea of that's how it is now, is you have to have a little bit less in order to share. It's just called sharing. But things become less valuable when there's lots of it. And science does that. And if you look at the King of Siam, many years back, ancient history, they used aluminum for their silverware. And, you know, I heard this story and I was like, aluminum? It's worthless. People throw it out. They chuck it. And it's because of a scientific breakthrough that it became ubiquitous. And so they went from, you know, it was more valuable than gold. And because of science, everybody got to benefit from it. And that's the type of breakthroughs that I'm hoping for, that 3D printed houses. Can you imagine where you just need a plot of land, and in 2 days, your house can cost 1/10 of what a house costs now? I think that would be fabulous. That'd be amazing. And I would live in something that was less extravagant if that could be done. I think that would be amazing. That would be a game changer. Or healthcare. If we begin to understand health at a submolecular level, where we can actually cure disease, where people aren't in hospitals all the time, and we're not spending all this money, you know, trying to maintain chronic illnesses. That's what I'm excited about. And I just, right now we're exactly where you said, Pamela, where we're at a point where you have to share. These technologies don't all exist. We're headed to some fabulous places, but we're not there yet. So in the interim, if we want to not completely ruin the planet, we have to think a little more ethically.
First, I want to jump in, Pamela. Mike Jobin in our chat area says, Pam is a delightful hobbit. I don't know. I think it's supposed to be a compliment. I don't know.
Hobbit. You know, that's not the first time I've been called that.
Really?
Hopefully it's the last time. Just so you know, I do not have hairy feet. Hobbits have hairy feet.
They have big, hairy feet.
Yeah, I have petite, hairless feet. Thank you.
And Pamela claims to be 5 feet tall. I don't know. She claims to be exactly 5 feet tall.
On the gut.
Not
Yeah,
4
yeah.
feet 11 you know, 9/27 or something, but exactly 5 feet tall.
But if there's other women out there with really big, hairy feet,
But, you know, the old song, Pamela, what is it? 5 feet tall, 5 feet something with eyes of blue, but oh, what those 5 feet can do. Has anybody seen my gal?
Nah, I have green eyes.
Oh, okay.
My daughter has blue eyes.
I'm going to jump into a happy story, a tabloid story, a story we can have with some fun with, but I promise you we'll get into a depressing story after that, talking about Katrina. That's not good. And what else could it be but the Bionic Penis story? Okay. Now, now I got a picture. I don't know. Now, this is San Francisco Gate, San Francisco newspaper. There's our guy. This is Mohammed Abad. Really a sad story to start off with. And he's a 6-year-old boy in Edinburgh, Scotland. Got hit by a car, dragged 600 yards, and among other injuries, oh my God, his penis was ripped off. Ah. Well, 3 years ago, surgeons started crafting a new penis for Abad. He's now 43 years old with skin grafts from his arm. Now the penis is fitted with 2 tubes along the shaft that inflate when fluid. Let's see, 2 tubes along the shaft that inflate when Ahmad presses a button. He's got a button on his testicles. There is a button that, when pressed, makes his penis inflate, and another button to make it deflate. When you want a bit of action, he says, you press the on button. And when you're finished, you press the other. It takes seconds. Doctors keep telling me to practice. Okay. He's a security guard. He married a woman 2 years ago. Now, this is kind of the icky part. I don't know. This is my question here. He didn't tell her that his penis was a bionic one. You know, you get there on the big night, the wedding night, and you say, you know, there's something I got to share with you. I got a bionic penis. There's 2 reactions. One, she just might get a little upset, might get a little, you know, freaked out, or she might say, hey, you know, let's turn that sucker on. But unfortunately for him, she didn't take that news so well. And they're divorced, and he says he remains a virgin. I guess he's, you know, practicing masturbation. And he hopes of breaking in his new body part. He's an optimist. And he says, next time I'm going to tell my partner, because I think some ladies want to try it out.
Well, I don't know what her problem was, but it's probably not that different to a guy using Viagra and not telling you until afterward. And I've had some experience with that. And one guy nearly bloody killed me. He was so enthusiastic. And then I found out afterwards it was because he'd taken Viagra. So, yeah. Not really that different an experience, I suppose. Don't take it unless you need it, otherwise you might kill the chick. But yeah, I don't know. Why didn't he tell her? You know.
Embarrassed.
Okay. But if she loves him, which you would assume she does, which is why she married him, what's the problem?
It sounds like there's more going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Pamela. The question really becomes, why didn't you tell her about that in the first place? I mean, any kind of surprise. I mean, you're with your partner, and I don't know, your partner's got 3 nipples or something, and you don't know about it, or they've had camp, they lost their hair. I don't know, anything really. you know, if you're in love with the person, shouldn't really be a lot of surprises. Pamela got a surprise because someone she thought she was in love. We won't get into that. But and I'm freezing. I can see that my connection may not be so good. But the thing is, you shouldn't have those kinds of surprises in a relationship. But it really, on the other hand, it can put the woman in control. She presses the buttons. I can see the opposite situation where you're saying, you know, honey, could you press the button? We've been here for 6 hours. I'm kind of getting a little tired. Wait. What are those people out in the hall? Just selling tickets? Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. I've got the answer here. So, Pamela, fictitious world. We're out on a date, and it's romantic dinner, and I'm staring across the table at you, and I say, my dear, I have a bionic penis.
Okay. would you say it at dinner?
Yeah, but I mean, how would you do that? How do you bring that up?
I think you would wait until you got to the stage where you're making out, you know, and things are happening, and then, okay, it looks like something's going to happen. Now I'll bring it up. I don't think I'd say it at dinner.
No, bring it up.
Oh, you know what I mean. Bring up the topic. I wasn't trying to be funny. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would be a tough one. I really do. I think it would be tougher, probably not for the female if she's mature about it, but for the male. We all have parts of our bodies that we're self-conscious about, and it's much tougher for the person that's trying to explain it.
You just reminded me, because when I was 16, I was not a virgin, and I was making out with a guy who was 19, and it looked like things were going to, you know, happen. So then he found he sort of pulled back and he went, by the way, I need to tell you, I'm a virgin. And I was like, okay, we'll go slow then. But so yeah, he brought it up at the appropriate moment.
So that worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Dale, let me turn this around.
But at least he told me. Sorry, I was going to say at least he told me beforehand, so that I didn't wonder why, you know, why he didn't sort of know what he was doing. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to turn this around in terms of surprises. Okay, you met this woman. You're madly in love with this woman. You're married. You go to the wedding night. She says, okay, dear, I have to tell you something. 3 years ago, my name was Mike, and I was a truck driver in Wisconsin.
And you want my reaction to that? That's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good one, Ed. You kind of got me cornered there. I don't know what to say to that one. Give that one to Pamela. I'm turning red.
You just reminded me because I'm really sorry. I said something like that as a joke. When things are about to happen with, you know, a friend who became a friend with benefits, and he just went, I don't care.
That's funny.
If you analyze the situation, okay, the body parts are okay. I am sure, I don't know the difference between silicone breast and natural breast in terms of feeling them. I'm sure I've been out with women and they had silicone breasts. I didn't notice. I don't care. Got a nipple attached. Why do I care? Number two, okay, you got an artificial vagina. Nah, I probably really don't care in terms of the equipment. But knowing it's a guy and I'm sticking my tongue in this guy's mouth and I don't know, that the whole kissing thing with someone who was a guy, That I don't know about.
It's not a guy anymore. She's not a guy anymore. And you know, I've seen some pretty masculine-looking women out there. What's the difference?
Oh yeah, you see, there's some with the technology. There are some beautiful transgender women out there now. I mean, models. They're beautiful looking, and I'm sure, you know, they've got terrific bodies and everything else. So I will guess it wouldn't make any difference, but it would. When it came down to the kissing part, you know, that would give. I'm sorry, I would give me pause. I think. All the rest of it, I don't care.
Well, if we look at CRISPR-Cas9, what they're going to do with it, this is going to cross species soon, where we won't be able to tell that, I'm sorry, I was once a canine. We're headed to a wacky world. I used to be a dog, but now I'm a human being. Ugh.
Well, our history is we mate with anything. Go ahead,
No,
Pamela.
I think I have to draw the line at that. I'm sorry.
But the genetics are different. They're now a human being.
No, I'm sorry. I'd have to just say, let's just be friends then. Yeah, no.
You thought something was wrong when you found out the name was Scooby.
So, yeah.
Well,
no to interspecies.
the Japanese culture has got some interesting fetishes. None that I've experienced, but one of them involves tentacle sex with actual octopus.
Huh. That sounds slimy. Maybe they're more evolved than us.
It shouldn't really make any difference, like you say, but it does.
I agree. It shouldn't, but it does.
Okay, we've had a lot of fun. One of my main stories I wanted to get to was Katrina, the hurricane that devastated New Orleans. And I added it because we're nearing the anniversary. August 29th was when the storm surge came in and just wiped out New Orleans. So the question becomes, 10 years later, what is the status of New Orleans? How is the reconstruction going? And there's kind of two parts to it. And I've got two articles. One is in Time magazine, the other in the New York Times. I've listed them in the show notes. Very long article in the New York Times. Not even going to read most of it, just going to hit the highlights. But in the Time magazine article, which you can't read because I couldn't increase the font, I'm going to try to read it. Talks about the which one is at that? I want to try to screen share. This is the technology. The technology they're using to improve the levee system and the system of gates to deal with the problem. And it's a case of, I think they're doing the best that they can. And I don't think I forgot to put a link in the show notes. Oh, rats, I don't have it. Okay. And I had it, I do have it. There we go. It's the Seagate complex. And there's a system of how the gate system will work. And it's a 133-mile levee system designed to protect the city from a once-in-100-year storm. There's a 1% chance that a storm will occur again in any given year. Now, as the storm approaches, officials can close off these gates weigh 220 tons and activate pumps that remove rainwater in the system's sewage system. The pumps, which are the world's largest, they can fill this stadium in about 90 seconds. Big football stadium there called the Superdome. It costs $15 billion. And there's some question as to whether or not it actually will be enough to withstand the next serious storm system. You have situations, of course, where because of climate change, you may have an increasing number of large storms. It's probably really impossible to predict with 100% certainty what will happen with a Katrina-like storm or even bigger storm. Also, the city is sinking. The city of New Orleans, which is much of it, almost all of it, is below sea level to begin with, and it's now sinking. I think it's like an inch a year. And you're going to have sea levels rising. So this $15 billion project, the best the engineers could do, some people even, what?
15 billion?
Yep, $15 billion.
Okay, we need your accounting expertise on this. So how many, like for that much money, there's what, 350,000 people in New Orleans?
Okay.
How effective would it be to take that money and just move them? Abandon the city. Give it all to the people. How much would they get each?
That's a good question. And that's the question people are asking. I think the first problem you have is you've got this historical city, birthplace of jazz. These people, I mean, when you saw the pictures and things, are completely devastated. Their city has been devastated. It would be politically impossible for a politician to say, we're just going to abandon the city. Completely impossible for a politician to say that.
But you know what? You don't. You make an offer one at a time, right? You tell people that, hey, if you don't say you're abandoning the city, you say, you know, we have a relocation program. You understand people have gone through traumatic experiences here. If you decide to move out of state or somewhere away from that devastated area, we'll give you X amount of dollars. So you never actually say you're abandoning it. But if enough people move, you know, and is the whole city going to flood? Could the people that are left, perhaps they could be relocated to higher ground that's in the area?
Have you seen the documentary Trouble the Water?
Nope.
Okay, I really recommend it. It was made by basically a woman caught in Hurricane Katrina on her phone and her friends' phones, and they put it together afterward and showed what really happened from the other side during everything that happened. They don't want to leave. It's home. It's not even people who have the finances to leave. They have cousins they could go live with and start over. They came back.
It's an emotional decision more than a logical one.
Yeah.
What you said, Dale, makes perfect logical sense, but it's an emotional decision.
Yeah, they come back, you know, and then they were getting their dead relatives out of their houses and stuff, but they wanted to try and save what they could at the houses because it's their home, it's their heritage.
So we've screwed up the planet, though, right? Global warming is here. Sea levels are rising. This is going to be a much larger problem. We don't have the capacity to let people live where they want to live, even though it is their home.
But that's just what I took away. I watched Trouble the Water when I was pregnant, actually. I remember watching it then. And, yeah, if anyone, I'm sure it's on YouTube. Have a look it up. It's worth your time to watch it. Yeah, I know what you're saying, because it doesn't make financial sense. It doesn't make any logical sense. It's going to, all these places that are flooding are going to flood again. These places that have earthquakes are going to have earthquakes again. Oh, someone's at my door. I'll have to go. Coming! Okay. I'll come back in a second.
Yeah, I mean, the Mississippi River and the floodplains, because it floods every year, the sediment, terrific for growing farms and things. Every year, floods come along, wipe them out. I mean, I think they've now got levees so that it is a little bit safer. But even people, if they live in an area that gets wiped out by flooding, they want to go right back there. You have a city that gets wiped out by a tornado, you want to go back to that city.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all agree on everything. I guess there's no answer.
Yeah, I think you're right. The answer is, first you need a courageous leader. You need a president, a prime minister, who's going to tell the people what they should hear. Not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. So you have to start with a real courageous politician. And then you have to have a plan, probably in phases. Kind of phase it. It makes no sense. The thing is, New Orleans is at the bottom of the Mississippi River. So you've got the ports there, very important port. You've got all that sediment down, rich sediment. So from an economic standpoint, there's your port city. From an economic standpoint, you don't want to lose that port. But what you could do is kind of phase it. Move it in degrees. 5, 10 years at a time, some kind of long-range plan. You're only going to be able to do it in phases, but it really takes a politician, a leader with enough courage to tell the people what they need, not what they want.
So let's talk about it in terms of it's going to happen, it's going to flood again. If the science is right on global warming, it is going to happen. So when it floods for the next time, there's going to be, what will people do? What will your average person do? Will they stay after being flooded again? Will they attempt to stay? That will be interesting, because it's going to hit us more and more and more. And I understand how when something's your home, you know, and not wanting to move. But I think under those circumstances, even though I love where I am, I think I would have to go. Once I completely understood that global warming is a fact, and I think most people are in denial of that fact. Once they get an understanding that they cannot beat this thing with technology, their only choice will be to move inland. And I think as people finally recognize that you're not going to win no matter what you do, what you spend, then they'll finally go. And it could cost billions that could go to many other causes like health and feeding people and science and all sorts of things.
It's inevitable, but I will say at least half of the people are going to dig in their heels. It's, you know, it's their heritage would be the word. It's their heritage. New Orleans is our heritage. And I would say at least half the people are going to dig in, but you're absolutely right, it's inevitable. And the second time it happens, the government might very well say, okay, guys, we spent $15 billion. It really doesn't make any sense. I think the government will more likely be not wanting, they're not going to devote another $15 billion or whatever it will be the second time. But they'll do something. They will still do something to allow some people to maintain their heritage and live in that home.
They'll do something to allow people to live in their world of denial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because it'll be politically motivated. So
That's a hard thing. I mean, when I say it'll take a lot of courage for a president or a leader. That takes a lot of courage to tell people what they don't want to hear. You know, they don't want to. We're drifting into. You have a war. Okay, Vietnam. You have a war. Makes no sense, but we sent soldiers there. Families have had their sons and eventually daughters come back in a pine box. They are emotionally invested in that war. They do not want to hear a politician saying, well, you know, it's a mistake. And your son's life, daughter's life, you know, I'm sorry. It was no one's going to want that.
Yeah, that's awful. Yeah, that's the way it is, though. Yeah, I think you're bang on, but it's so awful. I can empathize with somebody that's been in that situation where they've lost a son, a husband, a wife, etc. Yeah, that's a terrible thing, and all you have at that point is your denial to live in. You don't want that bubble to be burst.
No, but I forgot exactly what I was going to say. I kind of drift off into the next part, which is even a little bit more depressing, but it comes a little bit a lot we're talking about, which is this is the human side of New Orleans. And you have the federal government investing billions of dollars to make New Orleans better. Now, old New Orleans had a great city in many parts, but it had real problems with racism, race, and poverty, income inequity. There were rich parts, there were very poor parts. Okay, now you got billions of dollars invested. It's an opportunity to correct some of the problem. Happens, however, is same old, same old. They're recreated the city as opposed to trying to make it better. So you've got the same kind of problems now in the new New Orleans that you had in the old New Orleans. You've got, let's see, let me see. Old inequities have proved to be resilient. The child poverty rate, about 40%, and the overall poverty rate, close to 30%, unchanged since the year 2000. The city's jail population has been substantially reduced, but the incarceration rate is still twice the national average. In recent rankings, income inequity, New Orleans comes in second, and that gap falls starkly along racial lines. And here's a quote: "They want to push us to the side like we don't matter. The poor people, the black people, like they don't matter." There's 100,000 fewer black residents than there were in 2000, and the white population only dropped by about 11,000. You know, the recovery process, very, very, unfortunately, uneven. So where we had the opportunity to maybe fix something, you know, okay, you want to make the business district, you got to make the business district good. You know, let's focus on the poorer communities. Let's do something about helping them out. Let's make that a priority. They didn't, and so you just have a continuation of this whole, you know, New Orleans is like old New Orleans, good or bad.
I don't know what you do to address the whole issue. I think we're getting better gradually every decade that goes by. If you look at the sort of general state of the world, I think we're doing better. Humanity's doing better, but it's slow going, and sometimes it doesn't feel like we're making progress.
It's harder to make progress progress. It's harder to change where a culture is more focused on tradition, the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah.
That makes it harder. Where we're moving away in many cases from these traditional communities. You're seeing that with religion, where the number of people in the United States that are agnostic, atheist, or they're unaffiliated, don't go to church, don't read the Bible, that's dramatically increasing. It's now up to a third, probably doubled, certainly over the last 10 years. Getting away from that tradition. You do that, and now you have the opportunity to evolve a society. Evolve as a society. It's happening, like you say, it's just happening slowly.
That was an interesting one.
Any thoughts, Pamela? Anything you want to mention there about? How about Australia, income inequity in Australia?
What's that, sorry?
Income inequity in Australia.
Yeah, there's third world conditions in some parts of Australia for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it's disgusting.
Do you see progress in Australia in terms of the traditional view of, let's say, the indigenous people, the Aborigines? Are there any views in terms of Australian government, Australian white population?
Under the current government, we've gone backwards for Indigenous Australians. Yeah, they've been closing communities that they don't consider financially viable because they're so rural and so they're so remote. It's not about, as I was saying about Katrina, it's not about, the New Orleans zone. It's not about financial, it's about where people's heritage is. And if they need to continue to live there, that's fine. It's fine by me, anyway. So, no, I hope the next government, they'll be out next year, and a better government should be voted in, and hopefully we will see progress again, because they're still not even recognised in our constitution. But where there's committees working on it, so hopefully they will be recognised in the constitution. Yay, that would be lovely progress. And then once they're recognised in the constitution, they won't be communities can't be closed.
In the United States, that integrated as society, the interactions over race, etc., happens with the young. The old folks, they don't believe. And they don't believe in this integration. Well, I'm exaggerating. But it's almost all driven by younger people. Younger people going out to dances and things, interacting with people of different races, leading to mixed marriage. I'd say it's mixed marriages, accepted just about everywhere. Not so much gay marriage, but mixed marriage is accepted. Nobody even thinks twice about it. Do you see in Australia more interactions among the young between white Australians, European Australians, and the indigenous people?
You know, races have been mixing for the entire 200 years that we've been here, white people have been here. It's much more acceptable in the last 50 or so years. I don't know, with younger people, no, I don't think it's down to age. I know some very racist young people and some very liberal-minded older people. So no, I don't think it's the same here. Different parts of Australia are more racist than others. The further I've mainly lived on the East Coast my whole life, and I find the further west I go inland, the more racist it can be. Also, discrimination against vegetarians. You cannot get vegetarian food in the West. They just look at you like you're crazy when you don't eat meat. So that's difficult. Yeah, no, it's really down to this current government, and everyone I know who voted them in is disappointed in them, so I think it'll make a difference next year.
You know, that whole vegetarian thing in the United States, you have, again, traditions. You go to, well, I don't know, so I can't really say. But you have people, they're meat and potatoes, man. Gotta have that steak. I gotta have my bacon. And they're just, this is nonsense. This is, you know, what's all this vegan stuff? But you really are seeing a big push in that. You can get vegan food anywhere now.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I've had friends give because I'm going to Indonesia in 7 weeks now. Yay, to visit my friend and have a look around because I haven't been there before. And quite recently, there were a couple of Australian drug smugglers who were executed there under their law, and a lot of Australians were really upset by that. And I saw on my Facebook feed, oh, never go to Indonesia, veto Indonesia, blah 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 blah. Well, if I'm going to veto countries because of the way that they treat people, I need to leave Australia. I don't really see that as being any worse than what the things that are going on here, and I don't think that the regular people of Indonesia should miss out on my tourism dollars something because of some stupid laws. We have stupidity and discussing things going on here. Also, although I'm not for capital punishment, how many people would have died as a result of the drugs had those people not been caught? Everyone was saying, oh, they were rehabilitated before they were executed. They wouldn't have been regretful and remorseful and sorry if they hadn't been caught. So if you go to another country, you need to respect their laws. If I go to the Middle East, I cover up. I don't cover up in Australia because that's not the law. I don't have anything to do with drugs on any continent, but I definitely wouldn't be smuggling drugs into a place where you get killed if you do so. So, yeah, Australia's doing some pretty terrible things. I'm not going to veto a country just because of that.
Dale, I'm thinking in Canada, I'm thinking of at one time a real divide between the French section and the English section. Do you see that divide coming down, disappearing, changing?
Yeah, it's nowhere near what it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. There was huge division there. There's still some, it's still felt, but there's division everywhere, though, and it's between races. There's division with the Aboriginal population. There's division in really any sort of minorities that are out there. It's sort of a byproduct of just being human. People tend to congregate into groups because of group mentality, right? Because of there's strength in groups. And it's easier to group yourselves by race sometimes. And maybe that's where that, original intention came from. And it's taken us a while to evolve away from that with the understanding that it really doesn't matter. Inside, we're all just human. So yeah, there was a thing with the French, and they actually had to declare martial law at one point in the, I think it was the 60s. And yeah, so there are divisions here. It's nowhere near perfect.
In the United States, we've evolved away from, for instance, the racial problem to a reasonably large extent. It's still not nearly as much progress. It's incredibly frustrating and disappointing that you've got racist cops who will shoot and kill a black guy and not a white guy. The disparity in sentencing is ridiculous. I kind of wanted to share something. I guess you might call it my own personal evolution. You see that guy?
Yeah.
Now, we were together in grade school, 1950s. Played together in the playground, etc. But I never once invited him to my house. He never once invited me to his house. And he didn't necessarily grow up in poverty, but he was poor. And he went to law school. He became a professor at law school. I see posts from time to time where some of his students talk about what an inspiration he was. He's the exact same age as me, 73 years old. He's biking through Europe. He's biking through France. As you can see, 550 miles, maybe that's 2 weeks a week. He was in a biking marathon. You can see he changed his name. That's not the name he was born with. But he considers the name he was born with to be his slave name. So he took a new name. Now there's a guy, when he was growing up, I mean, the best he could aspire to be would be an elevator operator. And he went to law school, he's a professor, and now he's biking through France.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
So that's, that's an example. That's one of the good stories. And I think there are a lot of them. And I think that's going to be an increasing. I'm an optimist, personally, about the future.
Oh, yeah, me too. Well, listen, Ed, I have to, I'm starting to fade here and got to get up early. But
okay.
I don't think I can get through too much more. But
okay.
I will
all right.
definitely see you next week.
Okay. Okay.
You take care, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, I'll see you, Dale.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Pamela, how are you there? She probably had to be. I don't really want to end the broadcast till Pam, so I'll vamp. I will show you guys, who's ever watching, who's ever listening, some of the demographic. Oh, there we are. Hello, Pamela.
Sorry, just been doing mummy stuff.
Okay, well, Bill's gone. 2 o'clock in the morning. Maybe we can end this puppy.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see.
So, I mean, this time we had a lot, very interesting discussions, talking about almost politics and stuff more than science.
No, but it was saying that, if things are more based on science rather than emotion, then politics would be more logical. It's all intertwined.
And hopefully in a couple of weeks, Justin will be in a hangout with Ulysses, and we can have a really interesting, meaningless word talk about late politics and stuff.
Definitely. Are you going to be doing it at the same time next week, though, for this?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I'll be home by then. Yay.
Okay, great. Okay, see you next week.
All right.